Hi, this is Peter. Welcome to another episode of Beyond a Cane Pole Fishing Instruction. I'm going to do the best I can without my camera woman. She has had to take the daughter somewhere today. They'll be back later on, and depending on how this shoots, I may have to reshoot these videos. Today we're going to talk about Texas rigging a plastic worm. And we're going to talk about a variation of the Texas rig first. The Texas rig, excuse me, usually has you use a worm weight in front of your worm, and your hook slides up and down, but you can also peg it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to weedless rig the worm, and I'm going to use a zoom trick worm at first and use it as more of a topwater or close to the surface, and then we'll switch to the subsurface with the sliding weight, and I'll show you that up close. I'm going to bring the camera up here and do the best I can to show you how to rig this and all like that. Alright, what I have are the two worms I'm going to be using today. This one here is a zoom U-tail worm, which kind of has a curly tail. This one here is a zoom trick worm like you saw me use with the wacky rig. It's already been posted. Now, I've got a worm hook, an offset worm hook, right here that I'm going to be using. I believe this one is 4/0, maybe a 5/0 hook. I do have smaller hooks, but I chose this one for the day. Now with the zoom worm, it's got a flat side. What you do is you run your worm, you're hooking your worm down probably about that far, coming out the flat side, pulling it down where it's up on that little shoulder that was there. I take my hook, I hold my worm up against it, figuring out right about there. I pinch right about there, pull it down, and stick my hook into the worm where I just can feel the hook point on the back side of the worm. That right there is a weightless or a weedless rig. Now yes, you might get some slime and stuff caught up here or caught here. You will do the same thing when you work with a worm weight and you're running it weighted. You'll also do this for putting on a Carolina rig, which I will show in another video. And that's all there is to it. We're going to go fish that now. Alright, we've had casting instruction, and because I don't have a camera person, I can't actually be in the camera shot and do the fishing as well. So what you're going to do is you can cast that out there. And then what I do is with a slow picking up line retrieve, just twitch it back. And what it's doing is it darts right, left, but it stays fairly up near the surface. Now I can sit there and let that sink, but these trick worms are fairly neutral buoyant. And when I get close, reel it up. Now, the thing about this is it's not really designed for open water as much as it's designed to get up in with a snag. And work where you might get snagged. There again, you have no weight on this. And I may move to show y'all working this somewhere else. And that's all you're going to do. If you look, my twitches will bring that up to the surface. It really does not sink very much. Well, let's zoom in. Sorry about the bad camera work, but you see the weeds sticking up over there. Okay, this is a weedless presentation. You can crawl that worm across the top of a weed bed, the lily pads, whatever, work it, and then get to the edge and let it drop, and then work it in. Now you could use a U-tail the same way. it will not float as much. Let's put that back over that way. I think you can see that in the camera. Crawl it across those weeds, let it drop, give it a twitch. Sometimes I work it slower than others, but I usually only do this when I see action and all in the shallows. Now there's a piece of monofilament over there that one of the boys visiting got snagged in the tree and popped off, so that got hung up on that. But otherwise it doesn't get hung up on some weeds. I'm gonna move and I'm gonna fish this another minute, and then we're gonna switch over to a weighted version. Okay everybody, I'm using the same hook, but what I've done is I've put a little conical worm weight on it. That worm weight just slides up and down the hook. It has a little hole through the line, and it has on the bottom a little cup right there. Now you could put a bead in front of it, in between the hook and the worm weight, and it would actually make some noise as it slides. You can actually put two of these together, and with the cup shape in between with a bead in them or not. If you use a brass bead, it will actually make more noise. I just do this. This is just for working a weedless worm weighted. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this curly tail worm on, or this U-tail. Now what I like to do is I find the side of this worm. See how it comes out here and comes in here? I call this the bottom of the worm. It's just how I rig them. I want my hook, when I put it back in, to be on the bottom of the worm. Now you can't see it, I don't think, but the worm has a little seam here for molding. What I do is I put my hook into it the same way, bring it back out the same way, but I bring it back out on the seam. Then as I take it down, I spin it around, so the hook point's going to go back in the worm, and I want it to go back in on that side I was talking about that I called the bottom. I look and I pinch, pull back, put it back in the seam, pull it till it's straight and the hook point is just barely there. I just heard a fish. Okay, that's how it's going to be rigged right there. What it's going to look like with the weight on it is that right there. Now I'm going to fish this a little bit differently, and we're going to go over there where I just heard and saw that fish and see if we can't pick one up. If not, I'm going to fish it a little bit. But I also have a Carolina rig I want to show you guys in another video. Alright, I don't know how this is going to be with the glare from the sun, but here we go. Now this, if you remember from the casting, is where I'm going to pitch. It's too close to cast. And you heard how that plopped. That sunk all the way down to the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is just slowly crawl that across the bottom and crawl that in. And ever so slowly. If you notice, I'm not twitching my rod tip. I'm just slowly reeling it in. And I can feel everything on the bottom because that weight's on the bottom. Now I'm going to try this again. There we go. That's in the weed bed. Now, the thing with the weightless worm is I'm actually fishing this. Dang it! Underneath the weed bed. Which has a disadvantage if you get a bite, which I did. And then, of course, you got to get them back out. Now, I'm only using 6-pound test line. I wouldn't normally flip into a weed bed like this. There's a little hole right there. Let it drop down in. All the way down. Now, I'm over some of the weed. I'm at the bottom of the weed bed. So I'm just going to bounce it a little bit. I'm going to lift it up and crawl it a little bit more in the weeds. That doesn't seem to be sinking. It may be caught on the weeds. And just crawl it out and drop it. Crawl it a little bit more. Bring it out. Okay folks, I've not really had any luck with this Texas rig either. Usually it's a bait that you cast to a particular structure that you know where it is. But there's one more thing. Like I said, you can swim a worm. Let's say you don't have a buzz bait or a topwater crankbait or something. You start reeling pretty fast and you can get that worm up, and look at that, it's swimming across the top of the water. I have had bass, and I discovered doing that. Of course, it's actually a technique, but I've had a bass, as I was just reeling in, picking up to make another cast, actually hit my worm as it was on the surface like that. And it's just barely bumping the surface, curly tailing, coming in much like a buzzbait. Now that does, with these worms, twist your line a little bit. So you might want to put a swivel on if you're going to do that. Also, I'd probably do this a little bit more with a weightless rig than I would with this if I was truly wanting to work at topwater. But that right there is your Texas rigged worm. Pretty sure you can see that in the camera. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll see you next video.